The first thing really I'd like to talk about and understand is your current kind of caring situation, so a little bit of background about yourself and also your mum.
Okay, so my mum's had Parkinson's for over 10 years now. She first got symptoms when I was 9 and I'm 22. Parkinson's has sort of affected both our lives significantly, as you can imagine, and over time her symptoms have varied, fluctuated, and that's meant that the care that I've provided has sort of become more extensive over time. So it started off just helping her with housework now and again, but now it's sort of, I need to help with all aspects of eating, just moving her in a chair or in a bed, and just providing emotional support as well.
It's amazing that you could do that, and I imagine it's really challenging. Before we go much further, could you go into a bit more detail about your mum's symptoms?
So her symptoms, as you can imagine, Parkinson's, her mobility is affected massively, so she might not be able to walk unassisted. She has experienced off periods where she might be quite stiff, but at the time she's experiencing a lot of tremor and dyskinesias, which are a side effect of the medication, and they result in involuntary movements. She can also experience periods of low mood, frustration, and she might not be able to swallow very well, like her tablets and things. So she does need a lot of support.
You've touched on it briefly, but is there an emotional component to it as well, in terms of like her, go into a bit more detail about her frustration with like the situation?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like sometimes she might feel like she's a burden, and I don't think she imagined, because she got the illness fairly young, it is quite a common misconception that Parkinson's only affects the elderly, but she was in her early 40s when the symptoms first appeared, and I don't think anyone ever factors in being struck by an uncurable neurological condition at that stage of your life. She often gets quite emotional, I think. If she's on a bad day with her symptoms, she might say things like, oh, you know, sometimes I just wish I'd die, because it would mean that you could actually live a life and stuff. So I think she obviously definitely recognises the impact that it's had on me and her, and you know, that I'm really grateful for that.
I'd love to understand more about your specific care responsibilities. Perhaps a good way is to talk through a typical day in your life.
Typical day, my mum's on her Parkinson's medication 6 times a day, so that's every 3 hours roughly, from about 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So I'll wake up around 7 or just before, give her a tablet, see if she needs anything, and then if it was during the week, I'd get ready for work, or I used to get ready for like university or college. And her carers usually arrive around 9 in the morning. She has 2 carers now since her mobility's deteriorated. She used to be okay with 1, but she does need more assistance now, just moving out of bed and getting into a chair, etc. So they help her with breakfast, shower, dressing, just giving her a tablet 3 hours later, and then they'll do the same thing at around lunchtime. I'll come back at around 5, and then I'll help her. I'll prepare dinner and stuff for her, help her to eat if she needs to. If she's feeling okay, then we might, you know, try and spend a bit of time together, like watching a film or going out to the local shops if she's up for it, or just seeing friends and neighbours. And then she has a lot of medication at 10 o'clock at night, so then I'll help her to get into bed and give her that bedtime medication. Yeah. And then during the night she might feel quite stiff. Sometimes she does vomit as well, and that means I might have to get up in the night and help her so she doesn't choke, or she just needs to be cleaned up and stuff.
And let's take, you know, when you're in, say, an exam period, something like that, and you're trying your best to work hard, you've also got the responsibility of like caring for your mother. Like, how does that make you feel? As the you're looking at other people going, God, it's easier for them, they're just focused on the exams. Do you think they've got a point of view on you? Like, how do you see that?
Yeah, I think for most, it's kind of been good and bad in a way, but my final year of A-levels, my final year of GCSEs, and my final year in university, she was actually in hospital. Those were the 3 long periods in hospital. So my mum sort of says that was kind of good in a way, because it meant that I didn't have to look after her at night and everything. But it was still worrying about her being in hospital. It was going to see her in hospital.
Yeah.
And just still helping her eat, doing all the like menial stuff like laundry, shopping and stuff. So then, I was looking around at my classmates and friends thinking like that they have it so easy in a way, especially the ones at university if they've moved away, then they can just completely focus on studying and just being a student. But I think over time, I think when I was young, I was kind of more like negative about it, but the older I've gotten, the more I've sort of seen it as actually it's kind of helped me in a lot of other ways, like my time management, being organised, sort of like almost led me into studying biology by just reading up on a condition. So like I feel like as much as I've put into caring, I've also got a lot out of it as well. So I don't really portray it as negatively as I used to, I think, when I was much younger.
So I think it's fantastic that you can see like a positive from this, from a learning and an interest, and it's how it's supporting your career moving forward. Can you just go into it in like a bit more detail, like about the kind of things that you were learning about and why it's inspired you?
So day-to-day sort of actual caring, definitely with time management and organisation, and just even sort of being quite a people's person, because it does force you into what might be quite uncomfortable situations for people my age, like talking to neurologists at the age of 9 or 10. But then that sort of inspired me to go into science, and then I studied biology, and then hopefully this year I've taken a couple of years out just because I wanted a break whilst caring. My mum had just come out of hospital when I graduated, but I am going to be doing a master's in medical microbiology because I feel like I want to make an impact in science. And my final year project was on antibiotic resistance, which is also quite a big issue facing the world. So I think just by reading up on like Parkinson's and science in general from quite a young age, that inspired me to do that. And by just, it sort of helps you, like with what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It sounds typical, but you know, I've got through looking after my mum for so long, and she's been there with me every step of the way, despite her condition getting worse. So I think, you know, that's just something that I want to keep making her proud of me and stuff.
Okay. And just to kind of close this section off, like, how does it make you feel about yourself? Is it like a real kind of point of pride, or do you not recognise it necessarily?
I think when I was younger, like, I'd say from about 9 till 15, I hated it. Like, I was just, I think because I'm an only child, I was a bit of a spoiled kid anyway. But I think I just hated it. I just thought, why is it my mum? You know, why has she got this incurable illness? What have we done to deserve this? But I think when she was in hospital, she was quite ill, but then she was still battling through that. That kind of inspired me to think, like, you can't give up on her. And I think that made me stronger. And I kind of just realised that I'm part of this army of people out there, and it is something that we should be proud of, and that we should, like, and people should recognise that the work that people do.
I couldn't agree with you more, and what you've done is absolutely amazing. Should we get a tissue? Can we take that? Thank you for sharing that with us. Really appreciate you being so honest. I'd really like to understand a bit more about when you found out about your mum's condition. I'd love to know a little bit about what it was like before, and then when you found out about it, and then, you know, that little period straight after the first 3 or 6 months. So
she sort of got symptoms around May 2004, but then she had a fall in the bath one evening that May, and they thought it was a stroke at first because only her left side was significantly affected. So they actually had to investigate for about a couple of years to get to the bottom of what was going on. So that meant for the first 2 years, really, she wasn't on any medication. There was no confirmed diagnosis. So we kind of carried on in this period of unknown territory. And then in April 2006, we went to see her neurologist after lots of scans and tests, and they said that she had Parkinson's. And at that point, there was no one in our family that had it. None of our friends, relations, or even friends of friends. We'd never heard of this condition. it's not really something that they talk about much on television. So there wasn't much in the media about it, and we didn't really get any information about it, or even some sort of like children's guide to Parkinson's at that point. So for the first couple of years after that, we kind of just carried on. They gradually started adding medication to my mum's routine, and she needed more and more help just with cooking, or she was walking a bit slower, and I was moving from primary school to secondary school, so I was getting a bit more independent at that point anyway. Her friends started helping out a bit more, just like taking her shopping, just helping her around the house and stuff with housework, because my parents had just recently split up as well, when the symptoms first came about.
Okay, and going back to that first period, when you, after that 2 year period, so you probably would have been about 11 or 12 when the Parkinson's was confirmed. What kind of emotional support did you get? What kind of help did you get at that stage? Because that must have been horrific.
Yeah, I think I was trying to like keep a brave face with my mum, because we were both in the unknown really. All we were told that day when they'd confirmed the diagnosis was, yeah, there's no cure for this. It was like, great, and it'll get worse with time. And that's like stuck with me since, that it will get worse with time. And I think that's something that I really struggled at the start to acknowledge, but now I kind of do, and that makes me just want to sort of help my mum as much as possible, because I know that it will get worse with time. And there wasn't really much emotional support available from any healthcare professionals, but my mum's friends were really, and their like children were really nice, and they provided a lot of support in that period.
And beyond saying it's not curable and it's only going to get worse, what other information did they give you about the disease?
Literally nothing. Like that neurologist, we had him for about the first 3 years of my mum's diagnosis and following, but then once a change had been made to medication that resulted in her being sectioned, he was sort of taken off her care, and we didn't really get any information from him about Parkinson's, not even a leaflet or anything. Otherwise I would have read it, because I was the sort of child that used to just, even if you went in for a GP appointment and there's leaflets, I'd always pick them up and have a read. But to get nothing was...
Obviously you were quite young then, but as you've got older and you studied biology and you've got more informed, have the healthcare professionals always involved you in the updates and sharing information with you, or have you been quite isolated to that?
I'd say at some points I've been quite isolated, when she's just had these sort of stints in hospital, like the most recent one where she was just there while they were sorting out her care. She'd had a fall, and she ended up being in there for 9 months. But when we go and see her neurologist and her neuropsychiatrist at Salford Royal, they're the specialist consultants that actually change my mum's medication, recommend new treatments. They've been amazing. Like, one of them rang me up on A-level results day and he was like, if you've not got the grades, then I'll like fight for you to make sure that you get into my first choice university. And they've always really involved me in the care and asked my mum like how she's doing, how I'm finding her, if I've noticed any changes since they last made changes to her medication. So it's nice to know that they acknowledge my role and actually take on board any feedback.
And how big a difference has that made to you?
Yeah, that they really have. Like, I don't know what we'd do without those two consultants, really. Like,
it sounds like you and your mum have always been really, really close, which is amazing. Was there a point at which you recognise yourself as a carer, or have you always just been like a daughter that's looking after the mum?
I think as I've got older and I've become more of an adult, it's become a lot more difficult because the roles have been reversed.
Yeah.
So you're almost telling your mum what she can and can't do, and that is quite awkward territory to be in at the best of times, I think. But even more so when your mum's having a bit of a bad day and she's a bit, you know, not happy with the situation.
And who's it more awkward for, like you or your mum?
I guess both of us, yeah. I'm just saying it from my point of view, but I can't imagine it being any more pleasant for her.
Can you just talk to me a bit more about the Parkinson's UK website, the kind of information you were looking for, and you know, how that helped you or what you did with it?
So I think just knowing that there was a helpline there and that we could call, and they also have quite a good forum on that website as well, and just reading more about the condition and sort of how other carers find it. And it's difficult because she wasn't in the advanced stages then, but by reading what might be there to come with my mum, it kind of prepared me a bit and sort of helped me acknowledge the fact that what the consultant had said that first day of it will get worse.
You just mentioned about when your mum's medication was changed and she had the hallucinations. Can you talk to me about whether you actively went and tried to find information around the particular treatments and what that research looked like?
I did do a few Google searches, predominantly just to see whether people with Parkinson's did have mental health illnesses, either as a side effect or just with the sort of more complicated symptoms of the actual illness itself, just generically online.
Okay, and you know, you're probably going to places like Parkinson's UK, as you said. Did you go and look for, like, at the pharmaceutical companies and their websites to see the information they were providing?
Yeah, I think especially for like the manufacturer of those particular patches, the retigotine patches, they were the Newt Pro ones. I think I was just trying to figure out what other people's experience was with those and whether they had experienced side effects, such dramatic side effects from a 6 milligram to an 8 milligram increase.
Yeah. And when you were looking at the manufacturer's website, did you find the information sufficient? Could it have been more detailed? Could it have been more useful?
Yeah, I think it definitely could have been more detailed, and I think there should have been a point made quite early on that there might be a risk of psychotic side effects with it. Or I think even a lot of Parkinson's medication in general can result in those sort of side effects, and I think that needs to be made much more clearer from the onset.
So, do you think it would be fair to say that if, as an 11-year-old, you could have spoken to where you are now and understood more about it, that would have been invaluable?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's why I'd kind of do things like this, especially for young carers really, or people that might be even a bit older but still feeling quite isolated, which there are so many people in that situation.
You described it as the like an invisible army, or this army, and it seems very appropriate. Yeah. And they're definitely not getting the support that they
Absolutely
need.
not. Currently, I work in student recruitment, and I actually was involved in a campaign, predominantly through social media last year, to make sure that on the UCAS forms there's a carers tick box to recognise those carers from day one, because even now working student recruitment, at open days or interview days, there's a stand for accommodation, there's a stand for joining the sports teams, but there's no stand for carers and the support that the university can provide. And that's not to say that the universities aren't providing care, it's just identifying those carers to be able to make sure the care is implemented from day one. And so they're not in a situation like I was, where I was just ticking along, trying to get all my lab reports done, getting all my revision done, looking after my mum. And then it was only when she was taken into hospital in my final year, a week before my literature review was done, that I rang my dissertation supervisor crying 5-6 o'clock that evening saying, my mum's been taken to hospital, I'll need an extension. But I'm hoping with this, by doing projects like this and also by campaigning more for carers' rights, whether that's, you know, in person or on social media, that situations like that can be avoided more, and that care is in place for that invisible army from day one, as it should be.
I'm sure I know the answer to this, but you don't think that, do you think carers get the appreciation they need?
No. in one word, no. And I think the main thing is to make sure that carers out there are actually acknowledging that they're carers and that they appreciate how much they're doing.
And do you think, what do you think is the biggest challenges that carers really face? Is it that just lack of awareness?
Yeah, I think the lack of the awareness, or almost the sort of assumption that they're not a carer, that they're just a relation or a family member, and almost like they're expected to do it without their own well-being being acknowledged. Like I said that I'm quite lucky now that the consultants do, you know, they sort of acknowledge me, my role as a carer and everything else that I've got going on. And my mum's GP, they try and do everything that they can to make things easier. Like if she isn't feeling too good, they'll do a home visit as opposed to me taking her to the surgery. And even she has to have monthly blood tests, so someone comes and does that at home rather than me taking time out of work or studying to take her to that appointment. It's just little things like that that might, they might take a bit of a time to be set up, but they are massively appreciated by me and my mum.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really grateful that support is there, but I also know at the same time that it's almost like a postcode lottery, that there are some carers in some parts of the UK or even in the world that aren't getting that support, and I don't know why. It's not fair.
Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it and for sharing your story.
Thanks.
You're amazing.
Thanks.